Is the real estate market crashing in Windsor, Ontario? Hey guys, Alan here, real estate investor from Windsor, Ontario. And in this video, I'm going to go through the Windsor-Essex County stats for the real estate market from CREA, the Canadian Real Estate Association. So let's dive right into it. So we're looking at the Windsor-Essex County real estate market activity. This is straight from CREA, the Canadian Real Estate Association. To give you guys some context, we're looking at the May 2025 statistics. We're recording this video in early June 2025. So let's get right into it. So at the top left corner, you can see the sales activity. 566 homes have been sold last month in May. Keep in mind, this is the whole county of Windsor-Essex County, not just the city of Windsor. Now, if we look at the comparison from last year, we're up 3%, but the year before, we're down 8%. The year before that, 2022, we're down 14%. That's basically when they started hiking the interest rates. We can skip May 2020 because that was the year of the pandemic, so a bit of an anomaly there. If we go all the way back to 2018, where it was a more stable market, we're down almost 25%. Even 10 years ago, we're down 15%. So it is a much slower market than what it used to be. And you see the dollar volume here, new listings. So we have a ton of new listings, over 1,500 new listings. And that is the story of the year, basically, is there's a ton of inventory, a lot of supply. If we compare that to last year, we're up over 11%, up over 25% from 2 years ago. And let's jump again, skip over 2020, 2018, we're almost 50% higher compared to 2018, 2015. So the summary is a ton more active listings. A lot of sellers, not enough buyers. And if we jump down to the next row, active listings total. So we just went through the new listings, active listings, over 2,000 homes listed. Now Windsor-Essex County is a small area, so that is a ton of listings for our area. More than 50% more than 2 years ago. Again, going back 3 years ago, 75% more. And if we go back to 2018, we are still almost 90% more listings. So a ton more supply, and the buyer pool is basically the same or even less. And then the next line, sales to new listings ratio. So this is really important because this is the ratio from the actual amount of sales compared to the new listings. So there's only 36% or 36.4 sales compared to new listings. That means only a third or so of the houses that are being listed are selling. So 2/3 are not selling. That is a very big point. And keep in mind when they talk about new listings, it's a bit of a fake number because what happens is people will cancel their listing and then relist it. So it doesn't account for the canceled and relist homes. So some of these homes that are not being sold are being canceled, it gets expired, and then the seller is relisting their home. And if you compare that to the year before, it was 39%, 2023 was 50%, and 2022 was 41%. Skip over 2020, 2018, 70%. So we went from over 2/3 of sales to new listings being sold down to 1/3. So flip-flopped. So that is huge because basically 2/3 of the new listings are not selling. And then this will affect the months of inventory. So the months of inventory, this means if there's no new listings and the sales activity remains the same, it'll take 3.7, almost 4 months to sell. So 3 months is a balanced market. Even 4 months, you could say it's more of a balanced market, even though everyone is saying it's a buyer's market because there's a ton of inventory. Once you start creeping up to 6 months, it definitely becomes a buyer's market. But we're definitely not a seller's market like we once used to be. Compare that to last year, we were 3.2, the year before 2.2. Now the peak of the market, 2022, was only 1.8. So we basically doubled the months of inventory. So back then, people were overpaying, bidding up the houses. 100,000 over asking was very, very normal in the city of Windsor. And now things have changed. That's not really happening anymore. And then if you compare that to 2018, there was only 1.5 months of inventory. It was still a hot market in 2018, just not as crazy as since we've had COVID And again, we're going back 10 years ago to the same sort of months of inventory, 3.6 in 2015. So we haven't seen this kind of market for 10 years. 2015, that was a very different market, much slower. Now, the key thing is, though, even with the amount of inventory, it's not like prices have crashed. It's not like 08, 09 all over again where prices got cut in half. No, the average price is still about $550,000. So this just means prices have remained relatively the same, and just a lot of the houses are not selling. Some sellers still want too much money. Buyers are not willing to pay that, and we have this gap where buyers and sellers are not meeting, and properties are staying on the market longer and just not selling. And if you compare that to last year, we're down 2%. The year before, 7%. 2022, down 12%. And then compare that to 2018, prices have increased 87%. Go back 10 years ago, 166%. This means the prices have more than doubled. They basically doubled and tripled compared to 10 years ago, and we can thank the COVID pandemic times for that. Median price, $515,000. Sales to list price. So that means the sales are still, some realtors are under listing, and some people are still going above the listing price because the realtors are under listing. It's not like it's a crazy bidding war like it once used to be, but basically some people are under listing and buyers are offering above the listing price. And again, if we compare that to the previous years, it was relatively the same. Last year, 2 years ago, not a big jump. 2022, that was a big jump where people were still going way over asking, 132%. And then 2018, 104, where people barely went over asking. And 10 years ago, people would bid just under asking. And then median days on market, 14 days is the median timeline for your property to get sold. Compare that to last year, it was only 11 days. The year before that, 10 days. 2018 was 11 days. You got to go back 10 years ago where it took 28 days before your property got sold. So we're still not that far away, but it was double. It took twice as long 10 years ago to sell your property because Windsor was more of a hidden gem. It was a hidden secret. Not too many investors in Windsor, not as much demand. The last 5-10 years, a lot of people came over from Toronto. Investors started realizing Windsor was great for cash flow and just affordability. A lot of people are selling their homes in Toronto, all over the GTA, moving down to Windsor because it is much more affordable. Now, we just went over the month of May. Now, this is the year to date. So month to month, it changes. Obviously, it's a slower market in the winter. Things tend to pick up in the spring, but this is not our typical spring market because of all the inventory that we have. So year to date, over 2,000 homes sold. Compared to last year, we're down 6%. The year before, 6.5%. The height of the market, we're down 35%. There's a lot more homes sold same time 3 years ago. If we go back to 2018, we are down 21%. So once again, not as many sales are happening. We have kind of a standstill between the buyers and the sellers. And you got to go back 10 years ago, and it was down almost 20%. So we see the dollar volume here. Now, new listings total is over 5,700, almost 5,800. Compare that to last year, it's up 16%. The year before, 29%. 30% more listings compared to 2 years ago. 2022, 8%. Once again, we're going to skip over 2020. 2018, new listings was 63% more. Even 10 years ago, it was 40% more. So we have a ton of new listings. Active listings, kind of same story, 24% more. 2 years ago, 45% more, and so on. A lot more listings these days. Sales to new listings. This is important to note. Same story as we went over the month of May. Year to date, 36%. So the sales compared to the new listings, 2/3 are not selling. If you go back last year, almost half of the properties sold. 2 years ago, half the properties were sold. More than half the properties were sold in 2022. 2018, 74%. That means 3/4 of all the listings were sold, compared to now, only 1/3 of the properties are being sold. Months of inventory, again, year to date, 3.9, basically 4 months. We're up a full month of inventory compared to last year. So by itself, looking month to month doesn't really tell the whole story because we're comparing from last May and 2 years ago. But what you really have to keep in mind is the trajectory. What happened the month before, April, March? right? If you follow the trajectory, March, April, May, the inventory is climbing higher, higher, higher every month. So if this trajectory keeps on pace, before you know it, we might see 5 months of inventory, 6 months of inventory, and that's just going to mean it's going to become more of a buyer's market. Less properties are going to be selling, and sellers are just going to have to come down on price if they want to sell. And 2022, there was only 1 month of inventory. I remember looking on the market February 2022, the absolute peak of the market, there was less than 300 homes available. We blew those numbers out the water. Now there is over 1,600 homes available on the market. Huge, huge change. You have to go back to 2018 where there's less than 2 months of inventory, and 2015 to see the 4 months, 4.2 months. So we haven't seen this low of a market since 10 years ago. So that is huge. The market definitely isn't what it once used to be compared to a few years ago. The average price, $560,000. Last month it was $550,000. Not a huge jump there. The price is relatively the same compared to last year, the year before. We're down 16% compared to the peak of the market. And 2018 prices have doubled. We're up 96%. 2015, almost 200%. That means the price has nearly tripled. So that's why we buy real estate, because maybe in the next 10 years, prices will maybe double again. Median price, $520,000. Once again, sales to list price ratio, basically 104. And relatively the same in the last few years. We got to go back 10 years ago. It's relatively the same. Windsor is high demand, so people are sometimes getting in a bidding war situation, or realtors are under listing and people are going above the listing price. Median days on market, year to date, once again, is 15 days, just over 2 weeks to sell your property. Relatively the same compared to the last few years. 2022, it took a week. During 2022, you would sell your property in 1 week, and most likely people would bid it $50,000 to $100,000 over asking. It was absolutely insane. We need a more balanced market. That was just not sustainable. And again, it wasn't until 10 years ago in 2015 where it took 32 days to sell your property, which it seems like forever. That's what it used to be. It would take a month or two to sell your property. And then people in Windsor, sellers got used to selling their property in a week. Now we're in a more balanced market where it's taking 2 weeks or so to sell. So basically, in summary, the price has not really crashed. It's relatively flat, $550,000 on average to $560,000. That's the going rate. More inventory, less homes are selling, right? The numbers are a bit skewed because of the relistings, but keep this in mind. If you're looking to buy, it's a great time to buy a home, whether you plan on living in it or for investing purposes. And if you're selling, it's not the greatest time to sell, but it might be in your best interest to sell now because the market might get a lot worse before it gets better. So if you're waiting for the market to pick up, you might be waiting some time. Who knows when it's going to pick back up again. So if you're looking to sell, probably sell now rather than wait. If you're looking to buy, it's a great time to buy, and you'll probably have a lot more buying opportunities in the very near future. So make sure you guys hit the like and subscribe button, follow along, and I'd like to do this every month and share the stats with you guys. See you guys next time.